Hey guys, it's Jessica with Southern Sparrow. Let's talk about pausing, calling, and what happens if multiple people want the same tile at once. I've gotten lots of questions about those three things lately. Let's get into it. Okay, so when you're playing Mahjong, the most recently discarded tile, let's say it's this flower, the most recently discarded tile is the live tile. A live tile may be called by any player at the table from the moment it's discarded until the moment the next player draws and racks their tile. So if a tile that you need is discarded and it is the live tile, you may call that tile. And one thing that lots of people do is to say pause. You can say hold, you can say pause. Those two things are just to give you a moment to say, yes, I want that tile, but I'm not committed to it yet. And technically, you can say pause on every single turn and then say unpause and decide not to take it. You're not required to take that tile until you finish your exposure and discard it. So you can pause and unpause. So if you need to take a moment to think, you can say pause, look at your tile, look at your card, make sure that you need it for your hand, and make sure that you have the tiles needed to expose it. And then if you want to take it, you'll say, okay, call or take, or yeah, I'm gonna take that, or it's mine, and you'll start to put it up on your rack. So here's how that works. If you are calling a tile, you've said pause, you've looked at the tile, you've looked at your card, you've looked at your hand, and you said, okay, I do need that for my hand, and I can take it. Those are the two thresholds for, can I call this tile? Do I need it for my hand? And can I take it? So let's talk about what you can and can't take when you're calling a tile. You can take a tile for any exposure of a grouping that is 3 or more tiles. And there's a little kind of except if that we'll get to in a moment. So if you need 3 of them, let's say I need 3 flowers. This is our live tile. Someone discarded a flower and I said pause. I looked at my card, I looked at my hand. I realized I need 3 of those to make my hand. My hand wants 3 flowers, and I have what I need to be able to expose it. So I will take the tile off of the table and I will put it up on top of my rack, and I will bring my tiles up to meet it. You never take a called tile into the sloped part of your rack. You always put it up on top. And so I need 3 flowers for this hand, and I have a joker and another flower. So I can call this tile because I can do the full exposure. The reason that you have to expose your grouping when you call a tile is kind of to have some skin in the game, right? If you were able to just call anything you wanted and put it into the sloped part of your rack, you could call and discard and call and discard and call and discard. If you're calling a tile, you're committing to having that tile in that grouping in your hand. You cannot win. Once I finish this exposure and discard a tile, I must win with 3 flowers in my hand. So if at some later point in the game, I end up needing to pivot, then I'm going to need to pivot to a hand that has those 3 flowers in it if I'm going to win this game. So I've said pause, I've said call, I've put it up on top of my rack, and I've exposed it with a joker because I need 3 and I don't have the required tiles. Now let's talk about a couple other scenarios. Let's say I need this flower and I don't have any other flowers on my rack right now, and I need it for 3. I have a joker. A lot of times I get asked, can I expose 2 and then later if I draw a flower, add to it? And the answer is no. Once you finish your exposure, and I don't know why I can't say that word today. Once you finish your exposure and discard a tile, your turn is over and this is locked. You cannot add or subtract tiles from that exposure. So if I then decide, oh no, my hand actually needed 4 flowers, I'm kind of up a creek. I need to be able to expose the full grouping and then not make a change to that for the rest of the game. So if you don't have the number of tiles to expose, let's say I didn't have a joker, I could not go up like this. I would need to then let that flower tile die and hope that another one comes around at a time that I do have enough tiles to call it. Okay, a couple more things. Obviously, if I need a single flower or a pair of flowers, I cannot call that, except if it's the last tile needed to Maj. So if I'm one tile away from winning the game and someone discards this flower and I need it for a pair, I can say call to Maj. I can call for my pair and expose it on my rack and then put all my tiles up to win the game. But that's the only time that you may call a tile for a single or a pair, is if it's the very last tile that you need to win Mahjong. Okay, let's talk about another few scenarios. So let's say that I need, this 9 crack. This player to my right has discarded the 9 crack. I say call, and the player across from me says call. Okay, so we both called this 9 crack at the same time. This player discarded it. If one of us can call it for Mahjong, that player gets it. So if I'm going to make Mahjong, I get to call the tile. If she's going to make Mahjong, she gets to call the tile. If neither of us can make Mahjong, or if both of us can win Mahjong from this one tile, then it goes to the next person in order, meaning the player to my right discarded this tile. The next person's turn would be that player across from me. So even though we both said call for the same tile, she would get it because her turn is next, unless I can Mahjong with it and she cannot. Finally, there is one exception to this that kind of encourages you to move pretty quickly. If you're sure you need that tile and you say call and the other person has also said call, but you've already started to make exposures for that called tile and she has not, then you get the tile. So if we both, me and the player across from me, have both called for this player's discard, we've called for this 9 crack, and I have started to expose the tiles for the grouping that needs the 9 crack, I win this tile even though her turn is next. So it is a little trick of strategy to be confident in your calls. If you know you need something and you think an opponent also might need that same tile, you want to be the first person to start exposing the second you say call. Let's talk about a little bit of nuance here. Let's say that this player discards our 9 crack. I say pause, and she says call. We're both calling the tile, and so you then follow that pattern. Again, if she starts to expose before me because I still need that time to think because I said pause, then she's going to win the tile, and she's next in turn. So you want to, a lot of times people will message me and say like, well, I said pause and she said call, or I said call and she said call, but she said it 3 seconds after me. Don't I get the tile? And no, it's really, if you've both called for the same discard, regardless of who said it first, you follow the pattern of it. Can one of us make Mahjong with it? That player gets it. Can neither of us or both of us make Mahjong with it? Then it goes to the next person in turn, unless one player has started to make the exposure, then the player who has started to expose her tiles gets the tile. Okay, so that's a little nuance there, and it doesn't really matter if you said it and then 10 seconds later she said it, as long as the next player has not drawn and racked their tile. It's, you're both calling it at the same time, even if it's not like a jinx moment, right? Okay, so we've talked about pausing. We've talked about calling for tiles. We've talked about when you can and can't call for tiles, right? We've talked about who gets it if 2 players call at the same time. Now let's talk about one last thing with exposures. So let's say that we did call it, or actually sometimes flowers get confusing on this. So I've called for a Kong of 9 cracks. I've exposed it with a joker. Someone else at the table has the 9 crack. When I expose this, can they then take my 9 crack? The answer is yes, but not until their next turn. So even if this is already sitting on your rack and someone exposes the joker, you can't then immediately do that joker exchange. You need to wait for it to become your turn. So if in the case of the flowers, I did have my 3 of a kind here, and that player has flowers, and this player has flowers, the player whose turn is first is the one who can make the joker exchange if she sees it and notices it. So keep your eyes out on your opponent's racks for joker exchanges, because if it's your turn, you want to make that exchange before it gets to someone else's turn, because they may be able to exchange the joker before you. Okay, happy Mahjong, y'all.